IV. Why should Congress continue to invest money in Harvard when Harvard clearly violates Title VI and helps foster a hostile environment for Jewish students?
We are committed at Harvard to ensuring that all of our students thrive, that they feel safe and secure.
Well, apparently 100
for
100 professors who sent that letter to you criticizing your condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks don't agree with that. And your students, your institution is clearly producing students who are sympathetic to a terrorist organization. Don't you think that's a misuse of taxpayer dollars? My time has expired. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Ms. Hayes, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. First, I would like to frame my comments in the basic idea that I condemn all forms of hate. I don't think that there's any splitting hairs there. That does not make me radical left. It makes me human to think that all people should feel safe in their environment. In the wake of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel, there's been a dramatic nationwide rise in reported anti-Semitic incidents, especially on college campuses. Anti-Semitism in this nation has been on the rise for at least a decade. The ADL found that the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. increased by more than 35% from 2021 to 2022, and we've seen those numbers skyrocket in the last 2 months. A few weeks ago at Central Connecticut State University in my district, a racial slur and a swastika were written on a bathroom stall on campus. We should all be working to find solutions to this problem, not doing what we're doing here today in this committee. The Biden administration released the national strategy to counter anti-Semitism earlier this year. The strategy seeks to increase awareness and education in schools, communities, and the workplace about anti-Semitism. This includes having the United States Holocaust and Memorial Museum launch the first ever U.S.-based Holocaust Education Research Center to promote effective Holocaust education. As a history teacher, I know the immense power of storytelling and how healthy dialogue is imperative to finding common ground. I would also like to make the point that teachers, professors, educators do not enter this profession to hate any group of people. I'm happy to hear that all of the people on the panel list responded to the question by my colleague that you do not collect data on the conservative or liberal views of faculty. I'd argue that that would be unconstitutional. I would also like to note in the case of Harvard, you had a very conservative, notable alum who was invited to join your advisory committee. So diversity of thought is important, and all those views should be welcome on any college campus. President McGill, what steps has the University of Pennsylvania taken in the history to ensure students have an understanding of the history of anti-Semitism in order to address the rise of hate on your college campus?
I appreciate the question very much. There are a wide variety of things we do at Penn. We are very proud to be home to a very strong Jewish Studies department with faculty members who are expert, like Dr. Nadell, on the history and manifestation of anti-Semitism. Many students are taking those classes. We are proud to call Penn home to the Katz Center for Judaic Studies, which is a world resource in historical materials about Judaica and anti-Semitism and many centuries of history, actually. And many of our faculty and staff and students participate in programs at the Katz Center through their fellowships and education. And the third thing I'd identify, and there's more to say, we have many student groups that engage with one another across lines of disagreement, and they talk together, usually with the leadership of faculty, to learn from one another and from the faculty.
Which is exactly what is supposed to happen on a college campus. I also want to acknowledge the increase in Islamophobia after the October 7th attack. Not so-called Islamophobia, but Islamophobia. Palestinian students on and off college campuses have been targeted. President Gay, in your November 9th open letter to members of the Harvard community, you mentioned specific steps that you are implementing in connection with your ongoing work with the Anti-Semitism Advisory Group. Specifically, you mentioned work being conducted at the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. I'll also just say that 18,000 complaints have been received by the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, the same office that my colleagues are trying to defund. 48% of those have been sex discrimination, 32% disability discrimination, and 17% based on race or national origin. We have a problem. We need to welcome and embrace diversity in this country and teach young people why it is important to have a full understanding. My time has expired, and I know I'm going to be gavelled out, so if you can just submit that question for the record, I would appreciate it. And thank you all for the work that you are doing.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Ms. Steele, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Fox, for leading this important hearing. In October, I introduced H.R. 5933, the Deterrent Act, to bring greater transparency and accountability for institutions of higher education accepting donations from foreign entities. This bill will pass House hopefully tomorrow, and I'm hoping that Senate will take it up. The involvement of hostile foreign entities in our post-secondary institutions is one of the biggest threats facing colleges and universities. Question number one is Dr. Kornbluth. In September 2019, then Secretary DeVos opened the Section 117, it's a foreign disclosure section, investigation into MIT that has not been closed. What concrete steps that has MIT taken to address the lack of Section 117 reporting?
So let me say, and thank you for the question, we have cooperated fully. I can't comment on an open investigation, but I have to say we have greatly increased our reporting to be fully compliant.
So it's not done yet, but it's still under investigations.
As I understand it.
Okay. A study released just last month by the Institute for the Global Study of Anti-Semitism found that from 2015 to 2020, institutions that accepted unreported money from Middle Eastern donors had on average 300 more anti-Semitic incidents than those institutions that did not. President Gay, McGill, and Kornbluth, any of you can answer this. Do you believe foreign nations with views hostile to Israel would desire U.S. students to echo their views? I think Dr. Gay can start.
Thank you for the question. So we have alumni all over the world, and those alumni, through their philanthropy, support student aid, scholarships, cutting-edge research. One thing that their philanthropy does not do is influence how we run the university, how we enforce our policies, or how we keep our students safe.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. At Penn, we of course follow every law and regulation about donations from individuals in other countries. Beyond that, we do not accept any gift that would compromise our mission or create any sort of conflict of interest. So we have a very elaborate vetting process, and we have declined gifts where we have a worry that would be inconsistent with our mission, and we're very clear about this.
Yes, thank you. So all funds that come to MIT in any form are for open, publishable research. We retain full control over what research is conducted. We also have an extensive internal review process for reviewing foreign gifts. We also adhere to all federal laws, and we see these reviews through the lens of national security, economic security, and importantly, human rights.
Thank you for your answers, and I hope that's really true. President McGill, that from 2014 through 2019, Penn received a total of almost $300 million in Section 117 funding. Are you aware of the amount that was given by Qatar? Were any of these donations conditioned on the inclusion of a pro-Palestinian curriculum or pro-Palestinian events? Are you aware if any of these donations were conditioned only for pro-Palestinian professors?
I appreciate the question. I want to repeat that we follow all laws and we accept nothing that is inconsistent with our mission of teaching, research, and service. And we would never accept conditions on gifts. My understanding is we have taken no government gifts from the government of Qatar. We have a small number of alumni in Qatar who have given some gifts for annual gifts to schools, very small number.
But almost $300 million.
Congressman, that figure as of funds from Qatar is not one I'm familiar with. That's not what my information tells me.
Do you know exactly how much you received from Qatar in Section 117 funding?
The data I have, yes, I am aware of our 117 filings. Maybe I can follow up with you afterwards. That's not consistent with what I understand our 117 filings show, which is no gifts from the government of Qatar and a very small number of annual gifts from alumni living in that country.
Dr. Fox, thank you very much, and I yield back.
We'll look forward to a follow-up. Ms. Stevens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
It is absolutely essential that the Committee on Education and Workforce have a hearing about rising anti-Semitism in the United States of America and what is unfolding on our college campuses. In particular, as many of us have the where were you moment on 9/11, I have the where were you on 10/7 moment. When I woke up to the news of the horrific and barbaric attack on Israel and what we learned that unfolded that day in horror, my thoughts went to our college campuses and what would happen on our college campuses, particularly as Jewish students have felt persecuted and attacked, and their families have been concerned for a multitude of years. And I want to say that it is incumbent on us to let Jewish students know that they are supported and that they belong. And we know that the role of university presidents encompasses a lot of things. And in my home state of Michigan and in my home district at Oakland University, our university president, Ora Peskovitz, wrote a very compelling op-ed, and she said, one of my roles is to decipher and distinguish between protecting free speech and tackling unlawful harassment. And I was wondering if our university presidents could chime in on how you balance that and do that distinguishing and also that enforcing to make sure that we do not have unlawful harassment or the incitement of violence on our college campuses. Would you like to start, Dr. Corbett?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, so thank you for raising that. College campuses are a crucible of ideas where students are side by side, and it's part of the education to hear things that they feel are uncomfortable. But to be absolutely clear, speech can become a form of harassment. And our policies make absolutely clear that harassment is punishable. Speech that targets individuals, or again, as we've heard, incites violence on our campus, or crosses the line, these cross the line into harassment. This is taken very, very seriously.
And we obviously know that you're subject to the Clery Act and adhere to its rules and clauses. And look, we have now data from the ADL that says that since 10/7, we've now seen a 388% increase in anti-Semitism. And we have to, one, call out anti-Semitism, but two, make sure that we have the right anti-hate laws in place. And it's important for us as a Congress to be partnering with all stakeholder groups. But something else along these lines, and maybe I'm sharing this as a fellow student of the humanities. I hold a master's in philosophy, and so a lot of times it's what's the question, not necessarily what is the answer. And by the way, Dr. Nadel, I hail from American University. 2 people graduated from my class in 06. So we need to have the proper place to exchange ideas and have the space to ask tough questions. What happens when we remove humanities? What happens when we allow for government to dictate what is being taught on our college campuses, similar to what we're seeing in Florida and in West Virginia? What risk does that pose, particularly when we talk about the proper teaching of history?
May I take that? Yeah, it's interesting. Coming from a majority STEM institution, as I said, I can't even think of a place where it's more important that our students also learn humanities, have a humanistic perspective. We all have to live and work together as people. And in order for us to be successful, when I think about the technologies that are coming down the road, we want our students to understand the moral implications.
We need to do both.
We need to do both.
We need
exactly.
to do both. And we will continue to call out anti-Semitism as members of Congress and push on this topic. 5 minutes is certainly not enough. And I call on our committee chair. Let's have a hearing about affirmative action and what the Supreme Court ruling has now done to minority students and minorities being able to join institutions of higher education. Let's have a hearing about Islamophobia, and let's talk about anti-LGBTQ practices that are affecting the mental health of students on college campuses. Thank you, and I yield back.
The representative from Michigan, Ms. McLean, is recognized.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. I listened to your opening statement, and we all talked so passionately about what was happening on the college campuses as it pertains to anti-Semitism is absolutely unacceptable, and I appreciate that. However, talk is cheap, and we really need action. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is what actual action items, not lip service, but action items have happened. So I'll start with you. President Gay, under your leadership, Harvard has done little to condemn Hamas's brutal murder of women and children, promote Israel's right to defend itself, or protect Jewish students from harassment. For example, I'm curious, what action was taken from Harvard when a Jewish student was mobbed on your campus last month? Action, not lip service action, ma'am.
So this specific incident, I've communicated about publicly. So as you may know, that is an incident that is currently under investigation by HUPD and the FBI.
Any action?
And when that
that
investigation is complete,
so you
we
can't
will
answer.
address
I'm
it
going to
through
move
a
on to my
student
next
disciplinary
question. Do you
process.
have an action item or not? As of this time, was any action taken? Any action?
I can't share more about.
Will these students intimidating Jewish students just because they are Jewish be expelled from the university?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your question.
Will the students who are intimidating Jewish students just because they're Jewish be expelled?
You're describing conduct that sounds like it would violate our policies against bullying and intimidation and harassment. And if that is the
So a
case, it
simple
would be
answer,
addressed
yes. Thank you.
through our policies.
Another question. Why did you allow protesters to occupy University Hall for 24 hours? And not only were these students not punished, but 2 of your deans provided them with food and promised no disciplinary action would be taken. And that was reported by the Harvard Crimson.
I can assure you that we have very strong disciplinary processes, and where conduct violates our policies, we
So did
use
conduct
those policies.
violate your policies
We
during
have
that
disciplinary
incident?
processes underway.
So is there an answer to that or not?
We have disciplinary processes underway.
So was any discipline action? I love the lip service. I do. And you academic, I love that. I'm looking for an action item. Yes, no, was anybody expelled? Any action item. And if you don't know, that's okay too.
We hold our community to account.
All right, I'll
for
reclaim
our
my
policies.
time. Thank you, President McGill. Under your tenure, swastikas have been drawn outside residence halls where Jewish students live. The Hillel house was broken into. Jewish students urged not to wear symbols of their ethnicity, and those same students harassed when they go to collect kala for Shabbat. I will be submitting questions for the record on outbreaks of anti-Semitism at UPenn, and I look forward to your response because obviously 5 minutes is just way too short of an answer. But I would encourage you to give answers. We deserve answers. People deserve answers, not rhetoric, action items. It is clear that the Jewish students on all of your campuses are afraid to be themselves because you have refused to take real action. There's that word, action, against anti-Semitism, right? A lot of rhetoric, no action. I strongly encourage all of you to look at the Holocaust learning experience set up by Morris Life Health System in Florida to teach lessons from the actual Holocaust to students in 5th through 12th grade. This program has trained hundreds of teachers in 2 short years and has gone a long way to teaching students about the harm anti-Semitism has in our community. Harvard, UPenn, and MIT, I think y'all could learn a little bit about this. With the remainder of my time, I will yield to Ms. Stefanik.
Harvard receives funding from foreign entities and governments which support its Middle East Studies Department, correct?
We receive funding from a variety of sources because we have alumni from all over the world.
But that is correct, right? The Middle Eastern Studies Department?
We receive funding from various
it's a yes
sources.
Or no. Are you not aware where the Middle Eastern Studies Department receives funding?
We receive funding from various sources.
I am asking you a yes or no question. You are under oath in front of the United States Congress. You are giving lip service provided your attorneys. It's a yes or no question. Harvard receives funding from foreign entities and governments which support its Middle Eastern Studies Department, correct?
We have alumni all over the world, and we benefit
so the answer is correct.
from their
Yes?
philanthropy.
Yes? The answer is correct?
We receive support from our alumni from all over the world,
that support,
from individuals.
And what amount of support is that reported to the federal government?
I'd have to actually look at our filings.
You don't know? As the president of the university, you don't know?
Not that particular number.
It's
no,
$1.5 billion over the past 3 years. Are you aware of that?
I don't know if that is the correct number, but that's the number you've shared.
Has Harvard reported all
Regular
of the
order.
federal... Oh, my time.